Good morning. Some of you know that we found the church through the Jingle and Mingle a couple of years ago. We had parked our car nearby to go to the Parade of Lights, and as we were walking back to our car after the parade, we ran into a very kind Santa who showed us the way to some much-needed bathrooms and cookies. While I was reflecting on what I wanted to share with you about my stewardship journey since that night, it struck me how fitting it was that a parade of lights called me to you. As it turned out, I didn't just need a bathroom that night. I needed the light that you bring to the world. As someone who is called to advocate for justice, love, and compassion, these are dark days. It's easy to give in to despair. Continents are burning and ecosystems are collapsing. Our planet is in the midst of its 6th mass extinction. Wars are lasting decades and authoritarianism is rising. Democracies, including our own, are failing. Families are being ripped apart by immigration and legal systems that serve white supremacy rather than justice. The world's wealth is increasing, but more and more people can't afford housing, healthcare, and food. Our fellow humans are suffering and dying in our city, in our state, in our country, and around the world because we just can't seem to figure out how to love our neighbor as ourselves. When life as we know it is literally on the edge of extinction, and when love and justice are under constant siege, hope is hard to find. And yet, I get hope from every one of you. Every time I see you feeding the hungry, gifting someone a blanket you knitted, encouraging us to eat a vegetarian meal, fighting for social justice, bringing us joy and awe through your musical and artistic gifts, teaching our children about love and compassion, motivating us to be the body of Christ in the world, or simply showing up here week after week to support our community with your presence, despite all the obstacles you overcame to get here. You not only keep me from losing hope, your strength inspires me to action. You make me believe we can build a world where love and compassion and justice are our guiding lights, and you encourage me to do everything in my power to bring that world into existence. Over the past year, I've met so many of you who've supported our community for decades. And I want to thank everyone who's pledged to the church in the past. You are true stewards. Without you and all the past members who are no longer with us, I wouldn't have a community to push me forward to do the work I'm called to do. When you started supporting this church, you had no idea what type of world we would be living in so many years later. And you had no idea God would lead all of us here so many decades later. You gave anyway because you had faith that the work we do here matters. And I want to tell you that for me, for my life, and for everyone affected by my life, our community has made all the difference. I expect this is true for many of you as well. Now we are the people our future members are depending on to be the stewards of our particular brand of faith. God is counting on us to lift each other up so we can spread compassion and love and justice in a world that so deeply needs it. In a time when so many of those in power are doing everything they can to spread fear and hatred and injustice, our presence here, our community's existence is an act of defiance, and I'm here for it. Because the work we've been called together to do feels more important now than ever before, we are doubling our pledge this year. As I was considering whether or not we could increase our giving to such a large degree, I was reminded of a brilliant lesson about helping others that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared the night before he was murdered. Dr. King was trying to encourage his audience to develop what he called a dangerous unselfishness in their work for social and racial justice. Dr. King said that often when we're considering helping others, we're held back from action because we first ask ourselves, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? To be dangerously unselfish is to turn this question on its head and ask, if I don't stop to help this man, what will happen to him? As Jeremy and I were considering whether we could increase our pledge this year, I realized the questions going through my head were exactly the ones Dr. King cautioned against. I was asking, what will we do if a recession hits? How will we fix our broken porch? And what are we going to do if our son needs another surgery? I was essentially asking, if I pledge to the church, what will happen to me? When I took Dr. King's lesson to heart, I knew the question I needed to ask was, if I don't increase my pledge, what will happen to our community? And then I realized I can take Dr. King's lesson a step further if I ask, what will our community be capable of doing if we can find a way to give more? I had never planfully given to a church or any other organization before last year, but I believed in our work in our community, so I pledged at a level that made me uncomfortable. It was more than I'd ever committed to any group before, and I honestly wasn't sure if I could really do it. Those of you who are teachers or athletes know that the best progress happens when you're in that sweet spot between doing work that's too hard and work that's too easy. When you're challenged, but your goal isn't completely out of reach. I stretched into that uncomfortable space last year, and I found that my commitment to our community and our values and our work together grew. I became more loving, more compassionate, more courageous in the face of injustice. The personal and spiritual growth I've made this past year because of the work we've done together has made me a better mother, a better friend, a better partner, a better sister, a better church member, a better daughter, a better employee, a better citizen, and even a better stranger. As you consider your pledge this year, I encourage you to find that space right on the edge where you're a little nervous and uncomfortable and dive in. Frankly, I'm terrified about our pledge this year, and I'm even more terrified about what Libby's going to ask us for next year. But I'm also eager for the growth for myself, for my family, and our community that I know will come from challenging myself to commit to our shared vision for the world. I hadn't realized before joining the Stewardship Committee that our congregation's constitution requires us to set our budget based only on pledges. It's always wonderful if we give more than we pledge, but if we don't pledge, the church can include our gifts in its planning for the year. This rule that we can't plan for what we don't have is great financial stewardship, but it also means that we need to have your pledge to do our best work in the coming year. If we give without pledging, we limit the work the church can plan to do this year. And if the first few weeks of 2020 are any indication, we have a lot of work to do. So please get your pledges in by the 26th, which is next Sunday, when we'll be dedicating our pledges in worship. Thank you to everyone who's contributed to sustaining this community over the years. Your stewardship in past years has given myself and everyone here all the tools we need to do God's work in the world. And thank you to everyone who has or will commit to sustaining our community this year. It takes all of us working together to keep this place going. Your pledge this year will make sure our community is still fighting for compassion and justice and love for generations to come. The world isn't getting any easier in the decades ahead, and we have our work cut out for us. I hope you'll join me in pledging to support this work we've been called together to do.